But if I put that plant 10 feet over to this particular spot, within days it would burn. Well, hello gardeners, welcome back. Today we are in my backyard again, Vero Beach, Florida, zone 10A, and we are talking about microclimates, all about microclimates, what they are, how to change them for the type of plant grouping that you're looking for. A lot of my subscribers have asked some questions about why certain plants are doing good here and the same plant is not doing so well here. And a lot of times my comments have more to do with microclimates. So I thought, let me kind of explain that in a video in hopes this helps many of you guys kind of get the perfect place for the perfect plants. What they are is something as simple as a location that is different from the neighboring location, where you change a climate or you have a specific climate in one spot and then maybe 5 or 6 feet over, it's a completely different spot. Like for instance, where I'm standing here right now. I am under this plant grouping of fronds on this beautiful spindle palm, which changed this microclimate for this one little grouping of plants that I have down below. This offers filtered light. This offers protection from the heaviest rainfall. This offers just a little bit more humidity because it's engulfed in this kind of big heavy frond grouping. And then it's also a different type of wind. So I can put in plants here that are a little bit more tender, a little bit more difficult to work with as far as plants go, that need a little bit more overall protection. And that's what changing a microclimate does. That's why a lot of times somebody will say, if I want to kind of create a more shade environment, plant a few trees that'll give that area protection from the heavy rainfall, give them protection from the wind, give them protection from the sun, most importantly. So right here, we are on the east side of my house. So I'm getting good morning sun to midday sun. However, let me show you over here. So first and foremost, forgive the crazy chaos right here. We're in the project of putting in a spa and it's making my backyard a mess. But I want to really show you is how this side of my yard, even though it is the same yard as the opposite side of my deck here where this wall is, this area is pretty much heavy afternoon sun. Sorry, we're on a cloudy day today, but this is heavy afternoon sun here. And then this area is pretty much all afternoon shade. Now this has been created. So we've created this microclimate over time by incorporating, first of all, a big hedge of collusia to the back, and then palm trees intermingled back through there to kind of create this shade. You can kind of see, Bryce, if you look at some of those fronds, you can see the speckled light coming through, but you see how that sun is right there, but it's really, you're only getting a tad bit of just a little bit of light shadow here and there. That's the perfect environment for a tropical shade garden. And that's exactly what I wanted in this space. I wanted big leaf material, variegated material, very tropical material, and material that is a little bit on the susceptible side to cold tolerance, or to not being cold tolerant for our zone 10A. Some of these things could burn if they were in my front yard out in the open, but because they're engulfed in first the windbreak of all of those plants to the back, and then the trees kind of protect them from the heavy rays of the sun, and then there's such a big grouping of plants together that they really have a really good chance because of all the humidity they gather as one solid group. So they're going to get, I don't have to worry about protecting them because they kind of almost have a blanket of each other protecting them instead of me having to protect something individually from a cold front. So, and to give you guys an example, so here we have my aglaonema plants. So I love these guys. They are as hardy as you get. You give them too much water, they're happy. You give them not enough water, they're happy. You don't trim them, they're happy. They're just like an overall tough plant. I'm seriously thinking about putting them everywhere in my garden, but I can't, because this is the perfect microclimate for them. Bryce, if you look up, you'll see they're surrounded by plant and tree groupings that protect them from the sun, that protect these big old leaves from getting split from the wind. They're just in the perfect encased environment. This is almost like an indoor environment that we've created with extra humidity. So this is kind of where they belong. Now, if I took this plant and I moved it, so if I moved it straight across and put it right here in the direct sun, where that sun, you guys can see on my face how that sun hits, and it's a cloudy day. But if I put that plant 10 feet over to this particular spot, within days it would burn. So this is not the perfect environment for it, and that's the difference between microclimates. You can be on the same side of the house, you can be well within footage of one another, and this plant is not in no way going to be happy or survive this type of spots. Look at the microclimates in your garden. Really kind of get a good familiar feel for your yard. That way you can determine, hey, this plant is going to do fantastic here, and this, and maybe 6 feet over, not so much here. Or replicate what's going on over there, so that way you can be sure that this plant's now going to survive in both locations. So a few key things to remember when it comes to just kind of diagnosing your yard for the right plant, for the right microclimate, is not just location, not just north, south, east, west, but also consider kind of what's overhead, what kind of blockage you have, but as well as what it's next to. So right here we have a wall that's going to absorb quite a bit of the sun. This is a concrete wall. I do the same thing with rocks or boulders, but this concrete wall is going to bounce back that heat. So all day long, the heat that this wall collects, whatever we have, it's going to bounce that heat onto whatever plant grouping that I have here. So rocks do such a good job of kind of helping keep that heat in place. So they do a great job. If they absorb that heat throughout the day, they're going to disperse it through the evening hours. So that plant in that area is going to stay very, very warm compared to plants and trees within mulch conditions, which is why I mentioned in a lot of my videos that, you know, this plant is great for stone and this plant is great for mulch, because you want to make sure that that plant that is going to be around stone can handle that radiating heat that happens throughout the whole day. Same thing with structures, you guys. So what goes against this wall? I want blooms here in my future planting. That's what's going to happen here, which is fabulous, because like things like hibiscus and things like ixoras, things like foxtail ferns and blue my minds, those are things that can handle that bounce back heat. Yellow thrialis, I mean, firebush, you know, all of those things can really handle that intense heat, because that heat is not only going to last during the hottest part of the day, but it's going to last well into the evening hours, well into that time frame. That's why during a cold front, I use whatever plants and trees that are within the stone gardens and we've had a good hot day. I don't worry about covering them. I use that to my advantage. I don't bother covering them, because I know throughout the evening hours, throughout the night, throughout the cold, that's going to be the warmest part of my whole garden. It's the mulch areas where there's a little bit more moisture that I make sure that if I have to cover, I'm covering in those particular spots. But yeah, so kind of pay attention to that. And it's not just stones, not just walls, it's also bounce back like off of that wood structure there. So that area right there, whatever's hitting, whatever's bouncing back off of that, I need to make sure it's not something like a giant elephant ear, for instance, because that is going to burn a hole into those big giant leaves. That's not what it's made for. You want to make sure that it is something that can really tolerate and really absorb that heat. So you guys, we're on the north side of my property over here, and this is right at the edge. So this is the area that has a little bit of overhang of canopy, but not much. We're still getting quite a bit of sun. And I wanted to start here for one reason. So I have a collection of Nestor crotons, and they're kind of popping out more and more this way, probably because they're getting crowded out by everything else in this little bed. But they're popping out, and as they do, they're really kind of bleaching out a little bit, because this is the sunniest spot of the whole bed. You can kind of see how several of the leaves bleach out as the sun hits. Now, during the winter months, they'll get a little bit more pronounced, but because we've had such heavy sun this summer, they're really kind of the tops of them are really starting to bleach out a bit. Now, if you take and look, not even a foot, maybe 2 foot over actually, you're going to notice that this is the same plant here, and look at how dark the same plant gets in a much, much more controlled environment. Now, this is covered by tons of other foliage right by that plant, but it's maybe 2 foot to the left of that plant. But because of all the supporting neighbors, that you're getting very, very little sun compared to the outside plant. So that's just a small difference in microclimate. So if you're seeing that happen and you're like, gosh, you know, I loved what these guys look like at a certain period, but now they're outgrowing that spot and then the tips of those are changing, then it might be time for you to add something to protect those edges or whatever it is that you're not liking that plant doing, because that is exactly what happens. More sun for a croton, for shade crotons, have a tendency to bleach them out. Same thing with quarter lines. Quarter lines have a tendency to get bleached out. These normally have a little bit of pink through them, but because they're in more of a sun environment, they've gone more green on me. All right, guys, so we are in our side yard, and I'm gonna share with you a couple different spots in this particular area on how different the microclimates are here. First of all, I do want to share with you guys how cool this fountain is growing in. Look at these little babies coming up. These are all new growth from the water. That's just, to me, that's just so amazing how they can grow from the dirt and into the water the same. How ideal. Most of you guys probably know that elephant ears can work right in water. So if you've got a pot in your garden, it has a little bit of bubbling feature, maybe it's even a solar bubbler, and you want to add something like this, like to crown it off, you can totally do this. These guys do so well in soil, they do so well in water. However, back to microclimates, they need a bit of protection. So if they're going to be underneath an oak tree, fabulous, or under a canopy of palm fronds, like we've got 2 double spindles here, we've got a Alfredi cold coconut palm back here, and a very large double King Alexander on that side. And that grouping does a fantastic job of just giving just enough light to give this plant energy, but not one burn mark. I mean, it is fantastic. This is the perfect amount of filtered light for this plant to grow in. This plant is loving its particular location, its home, for it to do super, super well. And all of these babies are proof of that. So that's just one little spot. So let's walk and talk over here. All right, so Bryce, if you kind of go at an angle there, you can give everybody else a kind of the viewpoint that I'm talking about. So if this spot right here, we're looking at these, I mean, these ficus, are they just not the funnest thing ever? I just love that. You can see why they're called heart ficus, because they look like little hearts on the leaves. Ficus like sun. So this plant is a dwarfed plant, done super well, time for a little bit of a haircut, but done super well in this environment. Now, if I put them back there, I would have a much thinner plant grouping. They just would not handle back there where my burley marks are. All of those plants back there need that heavy humidity, need that pretty much shade environment. And they're doing so fabulous because these 6 areca palms are creating that microclimate for that protection on those. However, with the sun coming up this way, right in the middle of my walkway area, right here, these are getting not only the heat and the direct sun for early morning to midday, they are also getting the heat from all the rock that they're in. These are heat-loving plants and do such a fantastic job for that. So now they're probably not something I would put it out in direct sun, but this is the perfect amount of sun on the north side of the property for these guys. So they can handle the stone, the bounce back from the heat on those for the late evening hours, or they can handle the early morning to midday sun, full sun in that environment. Now, I'm almost embarrassed to share this with you guys, but I put up my wall, and I haven't done an updated video yet, but I will. There's some mistakes I made with it. Now, this is a garden area that gets morning light in this particular spot, and everything that I've had in the past here can particularly handle that with no problem. I've actually had too much shade in this spot because of the protection of what these areca palms and what this palm here is offering. But we do have one corner of this garden, or this wall, that I did not think about. Because of the angle that hits between the trees, and right here on this corner, you can see that my ferns have burnt to a crisp right here. I did not realize how much sun this little corner of the garden gets. And it's funny how it's just kind of like a ray. And now I know. So I'm sorry, some plants were murdered in the effort of figuring this out. But so now I've got to take what I can salvage from these guys and just move them down the same location, but in the same wall. See here how we're having some underneath here, underneath the foliage where they're protected, they're nice and green. So we're gonna have to cut this back and move these guys down into a lower section of the wall where they're gonna do just fine. But so that's kind of what I mean. A lot of people think the soil must not be good here because things are doing great over here, but on this side they're doing poorly. It's not always the case. I will put a soil video out because that is a nice secondary thing to look at, but a lot of times it is just what you're dealing with. Do you have bounce back heat from a structure? Is that particular section in stone? Is that is it just not protected from the wind? You know, there's a reason why it's doing poorly here, doing great here, and a lot of times it has to do with the microclimate. So sometimes it's as simple as putting in a young palm there to give it a little bit of protection, or put in some backing there to give it a little protection, or it's just not the right plant because of whatever structure you had there obviously needs to stay. You're going to want to put something there that can handle more of that brutal heat and that brutal sun. Okay, so you guys, we are now on the west side of my property. So this area gets the most amount of sun. This front section and the front section of my main front yard area. So this is just to the outside of my Lucie hedge, right off the road, right off my driveway. I chose to put in these foxtail agaves. Now these foxtail agaves are fabulous. They're like a succulent, so they can handle the sun. But anything generally with a big soft leaf like this doesn't like the heaviest rays of west sun. So I probably wouldn't have put, if I didn't have a couple things here helping protect it from this spot, these guys would be like a real pale yellow. You can see the struggle in them. They just really don't like that aggressiveness. Now, as things get bigger and plant-wise in Florida, they can handle more sun, but especially when they're younger, they would look pretty poor here. So when I first put these guys in, this tree was quite a bit smaller. And so this tree did a fantastic job of kind of giving me an overshadow effect over top of these guys, allowing them the time to get substantial in size. Now this tree also still protects. You can kind of see where I'm in the shade, and everywhere else around me is in the sun. And so this is really kind of telling you exactly why these plants are doing so well in this type of environment. So now once this tree gets 18 foot, because that's kind of their max on these, then it's going to get more cornered sun in this direct area. Hopefully by that point, these guys are going to be big enough. If they're not, that's when I bring something else in to kind of give me a little bit more of coverage on those sides, because I love them here. I want them to stay here long term. These live a good 20 years, and I want them here for 20 years. So if my landscaping around it outgrows an area, it's time to patch things in. That's why gardeners, it's almost impossible to say when are you going to be done, because, you know, plants always need a little hug here and there, so a little protection where they need to be. So, so you can absolutely do that. Protect your plants. That way you can put them where you want them, but just know that you've got to accommodate them. Give them a little bit of shade. Find them a shade tree if they need it. So, okay, so now we're kind of on the northwest part of my property, and I want to show you kind of what I was meaning about bounce back heat. So these are my quarter lines. I absolutely love this collection. They've been here a long time. They're very happy here. I propagate cuttings here because I want this to be just a real big chunky hello to my friends and family coming up through this walkway, and that's exactly what they do. However, we're in the latter part of summer, and the summer heat has taken its toll on these guys. Now, you can see from the outside edge of this plant grouping all of the burning on those leaves. Now, during the hottest time of the year, we get this. The rest of the part of the year, it does not even affect these. So we get less sun here, but we also get less heat on these pavers. These pavers and the sun reflection from my pond really push that sun energy onto this side. Now, if you look at this from the opposite side, or just peel these back and look at what these look like on the inside, oh my goodness. So peel back these extras and then look at that color all on the inside. It's absolutely gorgeous. Now this gets sun color from directly above. You think it would get the same kind of sun as these outside ones, but it does not. So because what's really burning these is not the sun hitting this area, because it's hitting it from the top too, but it's from this walkway and from the reflection of the water. So it really kind of tells you a lot about microclimates, I hope. All right, you guys, so that does it for microclimates for today. I hope that helps. I mean, I think it's a fairly simple concept. It's just kind of something that we don't always think about. So I want to definitely bring some attention to it, to you gardeners who are planning your landscapes, and in hopes that really gives you some insight. So make sure you use it to your advantage. If you've got rocks, if you've got structures in your garden, if you've got anything that's going to hold heat like that, boulders and whatnot, you know, bring in some of those cool exotics that maybe your zone doesn't quite allow, because you know that's going to give that extra heat during your cold snap. So you know, so kind of use it to your advantage. If you want more shade loving plants, if you want more of that kind of jungle vibe or big leaves, it's time to bring in the palms, which is not such a bad thing, is it? So bring in some coverage, bring in some protection, block that wind, that winter wind from hitting those things with some additional groupings all the way around. So please remember to comment True Gardener. I will see you guys very soon. Please do not forget to like and subscribe if this is the kind of content that you like to just kind of pop in and check out, and let it encourage you and inspire you, because geez, that's the point. We're wanting to get outside. We're wanting to be in our gardens. So anything that you can check out while you're drinking your cup of coffee or your glass of wine in the evening, then I hope this video is on that list. So I will see you guys